Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Breathless Love, the Bennetts of Langston Falls, Book 3 by K.G. Fletcher. And this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1, Hank Bennett. Hank Bennett was in an inebriated funk. Slurping the foamy top of yet another cold beer, he staggered away from the concession stand before the liquid overflowed down the sides of his opaque plastic cup. The outdoor concert was in full swing as he perused the sparse crowd milling about the refreshment area, most fans in their seats watching the live show. A wave of applause surged through the air as one song segued into another. This familiar tune was one of Hank's favorites, the country music upbeat and catchy. Closing his eyes, he hummed along for a few stanzas before his shoulders sagged and a wave of disappointment washed over him. Too bad none of his songs would ever receive the kind of accolades and ovation Travis Miller's demanded. The two-time CMA award winner was one of Hank's idols who inspired him to pursue his own dreams of recording and performing country music. Since he was a young boy, he focused on bending his guitar strings and creating original songs for anyone who would listen. But no one was listening to his songs, not anymore. He was reduced to nothing more than a fan now, his dreams dashed and destroyed before they even had a chance to get off the ground. The longtime group he fronted, known as the Bonafide Band, broke up last spring. His buddies he'd played with since high school going their separate ways after an extended trip to Nashville. They spent a few weeks in the Music City recording some of Hank's original songs at a legit sound studio. Hank spent an exorbitant amount of money just to hear his music professionally recorded, his goal of having his own album finally within reach, or so he thought. Producing music was tedious, time-consuming, and expensive, but he loved every second of the experience. His band? Not so much. Sure, they thought it was cool to hear themselves on the tracks. They even got up on a few Nashville honky-tonk stages at open mic nights and played for the live crowds while they were in town for their extended stay. But when it was all said and done, his bass player decided he wanted to settle down and get married to his longtime girlfriend. His lead guitarist headed back to college to finish his degree, and his drummer opted to get out of the South altogether and backpack across Europe. Hank was a lone musician for the first time in his life, and the thought of trying to put together a new band was daunting. "Hey, cowboy, you want to buy a t-shirt?" Hank jerked his head in the direction of the southern female voice, his stumbled movements causing the beer in his cup to slosh onto the front of his black tee. "Ah, fuck," he lamented, raising his arms out from his sides. "Sorry about that. I didn't mean to startle you," the woman giggled. She came from around the counter of a souvenir shack. The pop-up business was conveniently located near the venue's exit, where concert goers could grab an official keepsake on their way out to the parking lot after the show. Travis Miller's handsome face was everywhere, on shirts and posters, koozies, and keychains, the crooner looking like a model out of a GQ magazine with his chiseled face and signature smile. Hank flicked his free hand before palming the front of his soaked shirt. "I'm the one who's sorry, ma'am," he slurred. "Sorry about what?" Her hands were planted on her hips as she grinned back at him. He noticed her toned and tanned bare legs, her Daisy Dukes frayed around the edges of her ample booty. She wore flip-flops, and her toenails were painted a bright aqua blue. As his eyes roamed upward over the rest of her body, his nostrils flared when his tipsy gaze landed on her face. Damn, she was pretty. Dark brown eyes stared, her long lashes flirty and blinking with humor. She had her brunette hair fashioned into two long braids trailing over her shoulders to the middle of her buxom chest, her crop top revealing more tanned skin around her middle. "What are you sorry for?" she repeated. "I beg your pardon?" He swayed uneasily, shifting in his cowboy boots on the hard ground. What had they been talking about? "You said, sorry about that. Tell me what you're sorry for." Hank furrowed his brow and took a quick gulp of what was left of his beer, the country music in the air thrumming through his being. "I have no fucking idea," he mumbled, swiping his wet lips with the back of his free hand. And then it suddenly dawned on him. "Aha!" he exclaimed, raising his index finger into the air. He gallantly took off his cowboy hat and pressed it against his chest. "I remember now. I'm sorry for using profanity in your presence. My daddy always taught me not to curse in front of a lady." Awkwardly, he dipped his body and attempted a chivalrous bow, but his boots slid right out from under him on the hard-packed dirt, and he dropped his hat, falling in slow motion to his denim-covered knees. The plastic cup tumbled from his fingers and spilled. "Oh, no!" the woman squealed. She raised her hands to cover her mouth as if squelching another giggle as he made a complete fool of himself in front of her. Sitting back on his haunches, Hank disappointedly watched the last of his beverage seep into the parched ground. Scratching the stubble on his chin, he shrugged. No use crying over spilled beer. He ran his hands through his sweaty curls before picking up his cowboy hat and settling it back on his head. The humidity in the middle of summer was oppressive in the mountain town, this week in particular, one of the hottest on record. Looking up at the pretty woman, sweat trickled down the sides of his face, and his eyelids felt heavy from overindulging. You look a little lonely, she commented. Nah, he waved her off. In limbo, maybe, butt-faced, definitely. Lonely? Never. Hank harumphed, carefully easing his tired body up off the ground. You want to join me for a fresh one? Her smile was immediate, the color of her eyes reminding him of melted chocolate. I'm working right now, but I've got a cooler full of water bottles. Why don't you drink one of those and keep me company while you cool off a little? Sweat trickled down his cheeks, the thought of a cold sip of water tempting. Perhaps she was right. He needed a break from the booze and a moment to cool off. And besides, he was downright parched. Thanks, I think I will take you up on that water. He slapped the dirt off his jeans. Good, she smiled. Hank watched her enter the souvenir hut and disappear behind the counter for a second. When she reappeared, she offered him an icy bottle of water over the ledge. Here you go. Thanks. He took the bottle, twisted the top off, and guzzled half the contents before coming up for air. The woman in front of him stared, her eyebrows hitched with curiosity. What? He panted, sliding the chilled plastic across his sweaty brow. God, it felt so damn good. You're cute, and I'm Ella Mae. She thrust her hand over the counter to shake his. Hank licked his lips and carefully set the water bottle next to a stack of neatly folded T-shirts for sale. He did a double take, imagining Travis Miller frowning in the image. Goodness, was he that drunk? Reaching for her hand, he awkwardly leaned forward and pressed his cool lips against her skin, his eyes never leaving hers. My name is Hank Bennett, and I'm pleased to meet you, Ella Mae. Her pink mouth lifted into another one of her dazzling smiles. Did your daddy teach you that trick too? Nope, that's all me, Ella Mae. It's a Hank Bennett special. He gave her one of his signature smirks, hoping she was impressed. Easy, fella. I think you need to finish your water. She broke their connection and handed off the half-drunk bottle. Hank winked and took a sip. So where'd you get the name Ella Mae from? It's pretty. He watched her demurely tilt her head as if pleased. My daddy was a musician and a huge fan of Ella Fitzgerald, and my grandmother's name was Mae. Put the two together and you get Ella Mae. Hank spoke with exuberance. I love it. So you like Travis Miller's music? She rested her forearms on the counter and leaned forward as the wail of a steel guitar floated through the air. Hank noticed the front of her crop top gape, where he caught a glimpse of her lacy bra underneath. A rush of heat surged across his cheeks, and he took a hefty gulp of cold water to cool his surging libido. Damn, she was easy on his eyes. I do. Travis is the reason I got into music. Oh, so you're a musician too? She perked up with interest. I thought I was. Hank crushed the empty plastic bottle in his hand, the dejected tone of his voice noticeable. They were interrupted by a pair of concert goers who eagerly pointed out T-shirts they wanted to buy, Ella Mae going into sales mode. Hold that thought, she winked. Hank watched as she convinced the pair to buy more than just tees. By the end of their 5-minute shopping spree, they'd bought matching koozies, baseball hats, and a keychain. As Ella Mae rang them up, he strolled around the side of the stand to an area overlooking the amphitheater audience with a fantastic view of the stage. Travis Miller was smack dab in the middle, lit up in the giant orb of a spotlight, his vocal smooth and a rare ballad among other weeping swell of its steel guitar. Sighing, Hank shoved his hands into his jeans pockets and listened. From the first moment he held a guitar at the tender age of 8, he knew he wanted to play music for a living. For the most part, his large family encouraged him. His 3 older brothers and baby sister on the family farm showered him with positive reactions to the silly tunes he'd written and played for anyone who would listen over the years. Those immature songs turned into better songs the older he got, and when he put together his band, he was confident he had what it took to make it in the world of country music. Yeah, like every other dumbass with stars in their eyes. His hometown of Langston Falls, Georgia, welcomed him and his bandmates with open arms into every bar, restaurant, charity event, and festival that came through town, proud to support one of their own. His family's Christmas tree farm and winery also held annual events, and he'd become the main attraction over the last couple of years thanks to his event planning sister, Becky. But performing for the local fans he grew up with was one thing. Going on the road and playing for strangers was quite another altogether. Sure, he and his band had fun on the road, playing all the popular dive bars in and around his home state of Georgia, but the money could have been better, and the cheap hotels and long hours on the road quickly began to wear on everyone. Folks outside of Langston Falls didn't want to hear his original music. They wanted to listen to covers, the popular music, so they could dance. Hank thought if they could get some original music recorded, they might be able to find a good agent who could find them better gigs. But the competition was fierce, and Hank and his buddies were novices compared to some of the more seasoned bands out on the road. During their brief stint in Nashville, Hank quickly found out his friends weren't as committed as he was, and now he was faced with a decision. Should he continue to pursue his dream without them, or should he give up and work full-time on the family farm? Hey, Travis is winding down, and the show will be over soon. Ella Mae came up beside him, twirling one of her braids in her hand. Are you here with people, with a group of friends, or maybe a date? Hank looked at her and noticed a few freckles smattered across the bridge of her nose. Her large doe eyes did funny things to his insides. No, I'm here by myself tonight. Great, she smiled. She laughed and shrugged, not finishing her sentence. The deafening crowd roared as Travis finished his last song, the audience chanting, "One more song," over and over. Listen, Hank, I'm going to be slammed with customers after Travis performs his encore. But when I'm finished, you want to join me for that beer? Hank nodded, the thought of spending more time with the cute t-shirt selling country girl tempting. Sure, I know a few bars in Langston Falls. We don't have to go anywhere. We can go backstage to the green room. They always have a ton of food and drinks for everyone after the performance while the tech crew breaks down the equipment. She made it sound so easy, as if she casually hung out with the famous Travis Miller entourage daily. Wow, that's so cool they let you do that. Why? Because I'm a lowly t-shirt girl? There was a definite challenge in her tone underneath her smile. Hank shook his head with embarrassment. No, I didn't mean it that way. I know, she interrupted. I was just teasing you. I'm not usually the one selling t-shirts. I'm helping out Martina and her husband tonight. They're usually the ones promoting Travis's merchandise, but they had a family wedding in Biloxi. Believe it or not, I'm a musician too. Hank's mouth gaped. You are? Things were getting interesting. Do you write? Do you play or sing? Yes, yes, and yes, she laughed. The happy sound was music to his ears. That's amazing. I'd love to hear some of your stuff sometime. Hey, maybe we could collaborate on something too. He didn't mean to come across so desperate, the exorbitant amount of beers he'd consumed definitely messing with his filters. He cleared his throat to get a grip. But you're probably leaving tonight, driving to the next venue for another show, huh? Not necessarily, she said. What do you mean? Ella Mae turned to see a few customers perusing the shack. I gotta go tend to business. She tucked a stray hair over her ear and looked right at him, her provocative chocolate gaze causing his toes to curl in his boots. But after that, I want to introduce you to my brother Travis. Before her words registered in his brain, she skipped away as if she ding-dong ditched him. Wait, what? You heard me, she yelled over her shoulder. More patrons filed out of the amphitheater, a line starting to form in front of the shack. Hank didn't know what to do at that moment. His earlier beer buzz vanished in a flash as a new sensation took over his body. The air was heavy with music and the smell of summer thick with dreams and possibility. It was sensory overload between the crowd's roaring applause and the pretty smile on Ella Mae's face. Country music superstar Travis Miller was her brother? His mother's voice echoed in his mind, her words often reminding him of the life he'd only dreamt about. Opportunity is not a lengthy visitor. Maybe the universe was throwing him a bone, the weird coincidence giving him the nudge he desperately needed. Perhaps his desire to be a musician wasn't over after all. Meeting Travis was a thrilling thought, the country music artist his idol. But meeting Ella Mae was special too. Meeting the beautiful female musician was an unexpected twist of fate.